chekutanga ndine mibvunzo yangu miri chete yandoda kutaura ndeyekuti izvo constitution yedu isusu yekunzi izvo imimi yekuparliament ndimuchavhotera president. It means kana muri masarudza president inini mukadzi ndotongwa nemurume wandaenda sarudza anditongwe nemurume wandisina kusarudza, which means president anenge akutonga vanhu vemuparliament ndoti ndo amusarudza instead singamudi, saka anozotitonga sei singamudi president wacho. Ndo wekutanga. Yechi2 ndeya 2030 pane pandiri kuda kunzwisisa honorable kuti izvo imimi president akanzi 5 years term 1 akapuwa 2 terms, which means it's 10 years. Saka pa 10 years apa dzakunzi plus 2 idzi muri kuda kugadzirisa zvinhu zvamakafoila here pa 10 years kana kuti muri kuda kuita sei pa 2 years idzi? Kana mwana akanzi aenda grade 1 kusvika form 3 asingagoni kunyora zita rake haangazokwanisi kurinyora paexam yeform 4 kana makatofoila pa 10 years. It means 2 years idzi hamuna chamuda kugadzirisa, pamwe pane zvamuda kutobenefita henyu mimi pa 2 years dzamuda kudii, dzamuda kuwedzera isu tichisafa. Saka isiri kuti 2030 no, indai munoti madzimai ati izvo isu hatitongwi nemurume wandisina kusarudza, ndotongwa nemurume wandakasarudza wandakabvuma. Saka president kana ada kutonga isusu tisu tinofanira kumusarudza, asi kana dangotonga parliament chete mosarudza ime parliament. Ndatenda.
That Wanamoyo Chirandu are the watchers of the country. Our job is not to be in power, it's not to take up positions, but it's to be the watchers, to be the conscience of the nation. Paneta kurasika, we become the conscience. Totaura kuti apa tengeta akurasika, tadi kudai. So that's what I am, Ndiri Chirandu. I have no ambition to be in politics. I have no ambition to take a position in government. What I want to do is to fight for the nation, for the national interest of the nation. Many people will not believe me. I'm not even a member of Zanu PF. I do not hold a card. I've never been to a rally, and these are my slogans. Some people will believe it, some people will not. But it so happens that my work has always been to galvanize the nation. And by trying to galvanize the nation, I've tried to support the leadership of the country at each and every opportunity that I can, and tried not to denigrate. When I'm not happy, try to use internal channels or even these platforms you're seeing me using now to try and make suggestions, to give warnings, and to give my perspective through writings, through videos, and through social media engagement that then gets the messages to the right people and so forth. Even sanctions. I had no support from the government when I was fighting sanctions, but I fought sanctions so vociferously, so aggressively that members of government began to join. But there were a lot of them who were not interested in seeing sanctions going. They wanted them to remain, and they didn't support me. To the extent that even when we went to court, many people believe we were paid to do it. We went to court, we were given a bit of money, but we were not given all the money. Till today, we are owing South African lawyers monies because the government deliberately did not give us all the monies that we needed to finish the fight. Why? Because they didn't really support what it is that we were doing. Even my own contribution was never rewarded, even though promises for me to be rewarded were there. So it was not because of money that we did what we did. It was because we needed to save this nation from division, from protests, regime change protests, and potentially invasion. And I think we successfully achieved that result. The worry now is that we're beginning to take a path that could see more sanctions and maybe an invasion coming in future, or regime change protests happening just because of this constitutional amendment that is being asked for, that might see the security apparatus, the police, or even the army being sent against people, and that could open us up to problems in future. So that is what we're trying to avoid right now. And then you ask, what is the contribution that people in the diaspora can give to this fight? I think people need to start off by being informed. Let us understand what is a term. What are the limits to these terms? What are the limits in law? What are the limits in practice? What are the limits in custom? Because I think when we've heard Jonathan Moyo trying to argue that a term has no defined or limited period. I think that is nonsensical because the practice shows that we've been having elections every 5 years because every single Zimbabwean knows that we cannot go over 5 years in a term. And we know that those terms are limited to 2 terms. We cannot accept the 2 terms being a limit, but then pretend like we do not know that the term itself is defined as 5 years. Because then the question is, why have you been limiting yourself to 5 years? Why have you had the custom and the practice of only limiting yourself to 5 years? Why didn't you just go continuously until you decided to stop if there was no term limit? We know there is a term limit, it's 5 years, and that term limit is a limit and it's a term. And that term is what enables us to know whether a person has stayed too long in 2 terms or not. So I think let's get our knowledge. Let's read. Let's understand the term. Let's define those terms. And let's not have people hoodwinking us by trying to tell us that a length somehow is not a term. A length of a term is not a term. It's a nonsensical story, and we need to know that. And then once we know where we are standing, let us take our grievances through the legal channels and the legal process. And if the legal processes in Zimbabwe do not hold, then let us learn to use the other institutions that are outside Zimbabwe to push through our grievances. There is a tendency that the courts of Zimbabwe make decisions, and then those decisions are seen as final. No, you can actually take Zimbabwean court decisions out of Zimbabwe into other forums like the African Court of Human Rights and People's Rights and other fora to challenge whether those court decisions are correct or whether they are biased and illegal. Because what we are beginning to understand is that the issue that we have as Zimbabweans, not only as members of government, not the judiciary, not members of parliament, but Zimbabweans in general, believe in being paid in order to advance an agenda that is not necessarily good for everybody, but good for their pocket. So we need to learn to challenge that by going outside the system if the system is compromised. And that is what I wanted to say, is that let's use the legal processes. I don't know about protests because protests tend to bring problems and issues, and that is not my forte. But yeah, we must resist what we believe is a bastardization or an abuse of our constitution. They don't want to come up with a very shallow argument. Which times 5 years is not a constitutional limit. I mean, sorry, it's not it's not a strategy, a limit to.
It's not a change to the limit.
Yeah. But the term actually, I'm not meaning 2 terms are the limit. What is the term? What is defined as a term? Can the term itself not have a limit if it is going to be limited as to the number of terms? It's obvious that the term itself has to be limited and has to be defined. It is defined as 5 years. We are now creating a new law to try and extend it to 7 years because there is a limit to 5 years, which we've not been able to pass at any time in our history because we knew that it was limited to 5 years. So no, a 10-year is not a limit. But for some reason, we have something called a term that is not limited, which doesn't make sense. And if you see all the legal definitions of a term limit, it is the number of years plus the number of terms that constitutes a term limit. So I just think Zanu PF has created a crisis for itself where it didn't have a crisis. It has created a crisis in terms of the fact that they are trying to fight against the very same constitution they sold us as a constitution that they created for us, the same constitution that is making them compensate white farmers on the basis that they are following the constitution, but now they don't want to follow the very same constitution when it comes to determining how a term limit is going to be extended. And then this is causing divisions. And while it's causing divisions, it's resurrecting an opposition that was dead. And it is also beginning to make the West that has stopped looking at Zimbabwe start looking at Zimbabwe. It is worsened by the fact that then tapedza kudaro tiri pakati toda kuchinja constitution yedu, government yedu yoenda inoti hanzi inoda kuembarasa Trump by saying kuti karamba health bill yake, we don't want this health bill. They go and shout it out to the whole of Africa. The whole of Africa writes it in newspapers. A very egotistic and childish Trump then begins to listen. Saka Zimbabwe iri kuti kudii? Vapedza kudaro vachitavhara maminerals edu, achabvumidza export of lithium and so forth and so on. South Africa, by the yes, we should stop exporting rocks. Then we begin to get messages from America, people in positions of power. That's Zimbabwe, a threat to the United States. If you are now going to reject our president and make him look like a fool, and then you also say you don't want us to get your minerals. We're attacking nations right now. We are removing governments right now. You now go and play into that very same sphere, and you're playing into that very same sphere while you are undertaking a change to your constitution, beating up opposition, burning down offices of opposition members. Whether they are doing it or not doesn't really matter, but they've created the grounds for Kanamadiku or the opposition to start self-sabotaging in a manner that will look like Zanu PF is doing it, to put Zanu PF back into the spotlight and to again put Zanu PF in a position where regime change begins to be on the table again. I think that's foolishness. It is the highest level of foolishness. Then what is even more problematic is you are endangering yourself. You are putting yourselves in a position in which tomorrow regime change can take place. So that's why we're publicly without even hiding. If we are going to hide in ivory towers, we are going to now put it in public, which moves up a position that is going to endanger all of us and undo some of the work that we did. Why would we fighting sanctions if people are going to self-sabotage themselves and put themselves in a position where, again, they're going to be seen as a threat by the West? And we can't pretend like Zanu PF has got the power to do anything if the West decides to attack, to remove them from power, to put a puppet so that they can get access to the mineral resources. They can't do anything. So it's wisdom. We need a Zanu PF with wisdom. We need a Zanu PF that accepts criticism from internally, and a Zanu PF that opens up to hear other people's perspective rather than for a few people to have a voice just because one is married.
Can I engage you first? I'm going to drop. I'm going to return. Just hearing your points now, if one is to say, critique Zanu PF, maybe the effects of having started this bill, but not critiqued the bill itself and the argument why it should. Because the point of a referendum, others are saying, yeah, you need a referendum. Others are saying no. But your addition to this debate is nothing more than maybe a risk assessment to me, from what I'm hearing, on the effects of what Zanu PF has done. Am I right or wrong?
It's a critique on a number of issues. It's a critique that, number one, they can go and take a Jonathan Moyo, who misled Grace Mugabe to think that she has the power to take power from Mugabe, and eventually got Mugabe alienated by the hatred of Grace Mugabe. Then the current government that removed Jonathan Moyo and Grace Mugabe, who was misinformed by Jonathan Moyo, can go to the very same Jonathan Moyo to seek advice on how it is that they can extend the term limit without going for referendum. How do you go to an enemy of the government, the enemy of the president, the enemy of the Second Republic, seeking a solution on how to extend your term in office from a person that is bitter? That is the first point. Second point, how then do you now take a constitution that you wrote and sold to the people and try to use that the same constitution by deliberately trying to make a term change while saying that the term change doesn't require any referendum, but yet you put in your very same constitution you need to have a referendum in order to make any term change. How then do you try, number three, to come and defy the extension of a term and say that it is not the extension of a term limit, but yet in the same constitution you wrote that the term of a president or a vice president is 5 years. How can that not be a limit? How can that not be a term? And why do you now believe that using the term length, and I mean the words length instead of term, changes the fact that 5 years is the term limit? And then how do you then start to begin to persecute people who are arguing or trying to debate or trying to challenge this legally or by other means, how do you start beating them up? How do you start burning their offices? And how do you start creating grounds where you can be blamed for doing that? And how do you fail to investigate who is doing the burning and who's doing the beatings if you are not the ones that are doing the beatings? So I have issues with the amendment itself. I have issues with the approach of how the amendment is being done, and I have got issues with how it is that there seems to be resistance to anybody that is contradicting or opposing this constitutional amendment.
Yeah. So I'll bring my point back again, just to say, Guti, it is all about the risk assessment of in the risk management points that you've brought into the assessment really, because everything else you're saying, most people are saying that anyway. But you're trying to tell me, maybe to me, you're trying to tell me that since Jonathan Moyo, he did whatever he did, he takes away, you should take away his points, and say to yourself, this is the way he's not supposed to make a contribution into this. You yourself have made a contribution to your narrative, as equally as Jonathan Moy has done, as equally as Champion is doing here, and Scotty and everybody else. But I hear your point, and then to me, from a strategy, you are a strategist, and one thing I know, you're probably one of the most brilliant debaters in our country. But what I'm finding difficult is to believe that you are telling me that you cannot learn from your own enemy. For someone who really went to all these areas of war, especially in Goma, and you're telling me that you can't really, run in the voice of those that are actually supporting the MP3, and you told their story in a good way, that people believed you in the way that you did. But you cannot tell me that you can't learn from your enemy. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'll follow your debates, but as for me, it just sounds like someone who loves Zanu PF so much and is not happy that they're getting help. They might have got help from an enemy from outside, or you think it's not fair. But the same points you are bringing is what everyone else is bringing to this debate. I would want to see you and Jonathan Moyo actually argue this out and debate it out, because Professor Moyo is not far away from these spaces. It'd be nice to hear the two of you actually go at each other and say this and that, how it is. Because if you say Professor Moyo should not be listened to, koisu takaseva British Army tichazodiwa here munyika banji kana zvinomapfungira muri kuita zvichazofamba here. Anyway, comrade, I will speak to you soon, and I will see you soon. I'm on my way back home. I'm looking forward to kumbudzi. This time don't take it. Many thanks.
Yeah, before you go Padar, inini ndiri kubvunza kuti let's say Grace Mugabe and G40 had not listened to Jonathan Moyo's strategy that saw Grace Mugabe starting to attack Mnangagwa and what they did to get to the point of arresting Mnangagwa. Would they have been removed by a coup or not? We're at that point now. We're at that point.
I hear your debate towards Jonathan Moyo.
Let me just push a little bit more. We're at that point now where today I believe that the Mnangagwa government or the Second Republic is at a crossroads, like Grace Mugabe and G40 were, when they began to take advice from Jonathan Moyo about pushing Lacoste out, so that Lacoste could be totally destroyed and Grace Mugabe could ascend. I feel we are at exactly the same moment today, where it is that Jonathan Moyo is again bringing a very risky and very dangerous strategy to try and help President Mnangagwa to consolidate power. But it's being done in a very reckless manner that could actually end up posing a threat to the legacy. That's the current president.
I differ with you. In that note, I really truly differ with you. But I will shake hands because you are my friend.
Let me finish. And I believe that, like with Grace Mugabe when she was doing it, no one rose up to say, Mama, this strategy that you, Mr. Mugabe, and your wife are undertaking is going to destroy you. We are at the same point where no one is saying from inside that this is a dangerous move. Do not continue with it. And I believe that when people remain silent, when a dangerous and a risky strategy is being undertaken, those people are not benefiting the president, the nation, the country, they are endangering it. And that's where we are right now. And somebody has to stand up.
For your own information, you as someone that research and look at it, Jonathan Moyo did not just appear on this bill. Jonathan Moyo has been winning elections for Zanu PF for the longest time, and he has been doing that for the very longest time. At one point, from historical narrative and strategy, at one point he ran this media, he ran the music industry, changed, he revolutionized how people think and so forth, which gave Zanu PF a significant win in the elections that they did. Perhaps this time, Rutendo, you are misjudging, and I will shake hands with you when this bill passes in a few months.
So why did we win elections for Mugabe in 2018? Is Jonathan?
That wasn't the win. They had enough numbers, but they could not ultimately take the 50+1. And that argument can never be debated above that. Many thanks.
So the first one is, you say when we try to engage them, they don't want to be engaged on this particular matter. Who have you tried to engage? Who is they? And engaging them, I agree. Engaging them as who? Which you have a right to engage anyone, because it is very, very important so that we understand whose capacity. Is it in your personal capacity? Is it in any representative capacity? If you're representing someone, who? Which voice? Because I'm trying to understand when you say we, I take the presumption that you have a group that you represent, because you used specifically we. If it's I, we need to understand you have tried to engage them. So that's important to understand that. Number two, in terms of my questions, you talk of persecution of people. Who is being persecuted? By who? That is very important, because it's well and good and easy for people to use a broad brush and just say, Karama Roa, because Anga Chitaura, or Darwan is PF. I've been challenging that this morning with people who are saying, Asungwa, Asungirwa Taura. But no one has seen the charge sheet. Rabbit. Tutiziwe kuti achajwa nei kana kuti asungirwei. No one knows the facts around kusungwa kwake, because iwe unogona kubuda kaiwe Rutendo wototi unoita zvangu zvekambeni anti-sanctions, wobata mugaro unosungwa. Vanhu vobva votofunga kuti wasungirwa kunzi iwewe wanga uchiprotesta zvema-anti-sanctions. So it's really, really important for us to understand that. Then the last question to you, a lot of people that I hear presenting the contrary argument around, not even the contrary argument, who are anti the bill, have failed to present substantive arguments why they don't want the bill to sail through. They just don't want it for the sake of not wanting it, right? When I look to the other side, they are presenting, some of them, a robust argument, although some are not very robust or weak, is in my view, right? Some of the changes that we see being proposed by the bill are recommendations from Montlante, right? That the government is now trying to operationalize, right? The army must go back to the barracks. So if you look at 328, it is a change that is an implication on the military of our country. Although I don't like it, but it's a recommendation by Montlante, right? So the government, we see the government following through on some of these fundamental recommendations, and asks, even in the opposition, they say the army must go back to the barrack. The army should follow the orders. Now the government saying, all right, or those who are for the bill are saying, yeah, let's observe this. This is a good thing.
Thank you, Tex. First of all, I think it's very important for us to for me to equivocally say I never said I'm opposed to the bill. I never at any point said I'm opposed to the bill, so I don't have to get reasons why I am opposed to the bill, because I'm not opposed to the bill. I'm opposed by the method and means by which the change is trying to be achieved. That's point number one. However, having said that, I have also raised contradictions about the bill. The bill is saying that it wants to unify Zimbabwe, and it wants to stop Zimbabwe's fighting and bickering over presidential elections, which risks the country's national security and threatens to divide the nation and even to bring regime change. I think that's a contradiction. If we are going to present a bill, but we've got no consensus, and we're not taking everybody with us in an agreement on how it is that the bill is going to change the term limit, we've already got a point that is going to divide us, and a point that might actually put us in more divisions that might actually cause more problems for us in future. So automatically that point that the bill is happening in order to help Zimbabweans to have unity, it's not true, because we've become more divided right now by this issue than any other issue previously. Additionally, we say that we want Parliament to be the one that chooses the president. But we're not looking at the custom of how our elections have been taking place, where oftentimes Zanu PF MPs will get 2/3 majority and the president will get 53% of the vote, illustrating that some of the people who voted for the MPs did not vote for the president. We're not asking why Zimbabweans are voting like that, and we're not looking at how that particular vote illustrates that there could be value of Zimbabweans voting for a president and voting for an MP separately. And the president cannot hope that the MPs will save him from his unpopularity. Because it's clear that if MPs are going to get 65% and the president has got 53%, we have got a president that, unless we address that, we address this disparity that is only found with Zanu PF. Because when you go to Chamisa, Chamisa tends to get more votes than his own MPs. But in Zanu PF, the MPs get more votes than their own president. And this is a function of many different things. One, in Zanu PF itself, the MPs are asking for people to elect them, but at the same time, the very same MPs are asking the people to elect any other president other than their own. And the question is why? Zanu PF has not attended to that. It has not wanted to find out why the president is less popular than his MPs. They have not wanted to find out why the electorate wants to vote for Zanu PF MPs, but not necessarily the president. And so for me, until we reconcile these two, you cannot try to take the popularity of MPs to justify or to try and help a president who is not popular. And you have to ask, why is the president not popular? Why are MPs more popular than their president? The think tanks of Zanu PF should have done this research. They should have come up with answers to this, and they should have bridged the gap of the dissonance between the president's popularity and the popularity of his MPs, and the Bora Musango that actually takes place in Zanu PF, which is used as a strategy by MPs to express, and the Zanu PF starters to express their own disgruntlement towards their own president. We decided to pretend like we don't know this. So those are some of the contradictions that lie within this bill that we're being told is for the good of the nation. If it was for the good of the nation, and this is what the nation wanted, would have had MPs getting 65% and the president getting 65%. That is not what is happening. And no one wants to know why we got this problem of MPs that are more popular than their own president. Then we come from there, we go to the issue of the method by which they want to achieve this constitutional change. If we want a united country, we need consensus and discussion among the citizens of Zimbabwe, those opposed and they're supporting, to be able to determine whether they want this thing to be achieved through parliament and whether the law of Zimbabwe allows that. And if it doesn't, then let it go to court and let the courts make a determination. Then we come from there, you say that who is being victimized? Who is being persecuted? Currently, the allegation is that Maduku was prosecuted and that Safe's building was dead. I never believed the Safe story. I believe that Safe is self-sabotage. But my problem comes in the aspect that our police has done no investigation. It has not been taking us through any investigation process to explain who is doing these persecutions. And the people that are alleging these persecutions are persecuting themselves. The police has done no investigation and has undertaken no arrests and has done nothing to try to get to the bottom of who could be undertaking these things that are actually national security threats and could be deemed to be terrorist activity. Now the question is, what kind of a police force in a country cannot investigate terrorism, cannot investigate arson, could not investigate false allegations?
until the police has done adequate work. Otherwise,
leadership that is really mediocre wants to impose itself because it says it's the only leadership that can govern. Yeah, look, guys, the truth of the matter is that we are number one tourist destination. Yes, we've got beautiful tourist destinations, but I traveled the whole of Harare during Christmas. I went to Nyanga. I was also in Kariba, Vic Falls. There were not many visitors. You went to Vic Falls, a lot of Kariba, a lot of the places were not even occupied.
Thank
The
you.
place I was staying is a very, very.
So why
very
were you not
place.
saying it then?
No, I was not saying.
Were
it
you
because
lying on behalf? Who were you lying on behalf of?
Let me continue. I was doing PR, and the PR was that we want people to believe.
Whose PR were you doing when you get to a place and you see it's not good, and then you say it's good?
I'm answering the question. We were doing PR because we want a united nation that is looking at one leadership to take us forward.
Oh,
But
come on,
now
don't be
this
ridiculous,
leadership-
Rutendo.
this
So
lead- this
you're doing
leadership-
PR for the president, lying about Zimbabwe.
No,
This
this presentation is not being done for you.
No, I'm asking the question. Real question. You actually drove to Inyanga. You drove to Victoria Falls. You drove to Kariba, lying on behalf of the president.
Padare, I like the question. And I think it's the question that he really needs to answer when he finishes the submission. But if he says something and we ask him, he says something, we ask him, then nothing is going to move on. I like the question and he needs to answer, but allow these 2 minutes of responding to finish. Then I'll allow you to ask the question.
Right. So when we're doing PR, we want to build confidence behind the narrative that our nation is doing well and that our nation is moving forward. And we want to bring the whole nation together with us. However, when a leadership that is really mediocre wants to impose itself because it says it's the only leadership that can govern and rule Zimbabwe, this is when a lot of us have to stand up and say, listen, there is an opportunity cost of having this same leadership continue.
No, so
They have not
he
really-
drove all that way for a mediocre president.
No, Padare, he has to finish. It's engaged. It's intrigued a lot of people. One, it's actually very original because Rutendo, had you landed?
I hadn't even made my point.
Okay,
Right.
go ahead.
So we're saying I have been one of the biggest defenders of this government because what we are saying to people is we've got a leadership that seems to have a vision. Let's unite as a nation around them instead of us being divided. Let's follow their lead and let's build the country. However, we also do that knowing that within a certain period of time, they will have done their share and they will have to move forward. So here where we are expecting the president to now leave power and move forward, he doesn't want to move forward. And some of us are now saying, no, there's an opportunity cost of having a president who allows such an amendment in the way that he wants to have it, that is going to destabilize the country, continuing to be in power when it's going to actually cost us as a nation. So that's why we're beginning to speak out, to say, Mr. President, we love you. We've rallied people behind you. We've spoken that people need to look at you as a leader that's about to take us somewhere, but you are staying a little bit longer than you're welcome. And there is no reason why you should stay longer than you're welcome, because you have been good, but not that good. That is why now we're saying that when we really look and start dissecting what he has done and what he hasn't done, we'll see that he actually hasn't done more than what he has done. And we don't want to get to that point, but he's bringing us to that point because of trying to force himself on us through Zanu PF. We believe that there are other leaders, younger leaders, who are much more circumspect, who will make better decisions than the kind of decisions we're currently seeing, like the extension of this constitution in the manner that they want to extend it, that is going to actually put our nation at loggerheads. Now, Padare wanted to know, so why did you say all the things that you said before? Because we were supporting the president. We were supporting him within the limits of the time that we've given him, hoping that by the time that he has to go, he will go and allow other people to take things forward. But now he doesn't want to go. And this is bringing a threat to the nation. And if you remember, I was one of those staunch... Driving to Glenora, and even before I get to Glenora, I'm just cringing because of the roads in the area that I'm going to go. And the issue of roads and bad roads is not an issue of Glenora only. It's every single township and even some of the suburbs. I grew up in Waterfalls, and the roads in Waterfalls are bad. In fact, some of the areas don't even have roads anymore. That's how bad it is. And so I started asking myself, how do we fix this situation? Because Zimbabwe has been left behind in infrastructure terms by most of Africa. You go to Kenya, go to Rwanda, Nigeria, Ethiopia, most parts of the world, they don't have potholes in their roads the way we do. And obviously this is the 24 years of sanctions. And just to avoid us arguing, some of you are going to say it's corruption, so it's corruption, mismanagement, whatever it is. The issue is we have to fix these roads. If Zimbabwe is going to be competitive, if you're going to attract some of the highest skills and expatriates and investors into this country, we have to fix the roads. And the bottom line is that the government just doesn't have the money. And I know some of you are going to say, yeah, but they buy cars. And of course they buy cars because they don't have money to pay their ministers. So the only way they retain some of these ministers is by giving them a nice car. A nice car for the next 5 years will beat trying to give that minister a salary of $150,000 a year. Let's be honest. But anyway, what is the solution? Not the cause. So I was speaking to a friend of mine who owns one of the biggest contracting companies. Yeah, that's the road, okay? And I said to them, how much will it cost for us to fix our roads and how long will it take? I was thinking maybe 20 years. And he said, hey man, if we really are serious and we invested $5 million into each of the contracting companies that build roads in Zimbabwe, in the next 3 to 5 years, we could have fixed all our roads. I said, what? He said, yes. $5 million every single month to contracting companies. These contracting companies can be able to fix our roads within a period of 3 to 5 years. So each one of them just needs $5 million every single month, and they can fix our roads and get them up to standard. And I looked at what it would bring us, to bring investment, to attract tourists, and it would even make some of the Zimbabweans that are outside Zimbabwe begin to look at saying, I wouldn't mind going back home and investing my money there. So it's worth it. So the question next was, where do we get this 5 million per company every single month for the next 5 years? Government doesn't have the money. Zinara is collecting money and everybody wants to know, where is this money going? The truth of the matter is your government is so indebted. 18 billion US dollars. They need to repay that. They need to compensate white farmers, a decision that I don't support, but you Zimbabweans voted for that in your constitution and the referendum where you refused to actually change the constitution when the time was right. But that's another discussion altogether. So what do we do? Got an indebted government that needs to pool money that comes from toll gates, put them into government coffers so that you can have police services, you can have education, you can have teachers, you can have nurses. So what do we do? And I thought to myself, every single weekend, people spend money on alcohol, on entertaining. And people can spend anything from $50 a day, some to $300, and the mbingas can go way above that. So, as car owners, 1.9 million of us, are we not able to say $20 every single month? $50 every single month? Let's push it. $100 every single month that can be put into a kitty. One that's not going to be managed by Mutuli or government, of course, because they're already in a position where they need to get as much money as possible and they'll just simply take that money. So let's talk about private collection of this money through a private institution, audit it. And then we collect this money every single month and give it to these contracting companies. Wouldn't we get our roads done? Wouldn't we look at doing our schools? Wouldn't we improve so much infrastructure to catch up with some of the countries that have now become better than Zim? Because we need to remain competitive. I think this is a discussion that we need to open up and start having. Private-public partnership, where we, as the private people, individuals, and public, collect our own funds, invest it in an institution that will be audited,
and that institution will give it to the contracting companies. There's that one contracting company that screwed up the Masvingo Road. It's patch of the Masvingo Road. Obviously, you don't give money to companies like that. But everybody would be audited. Once they've done a road properly, they get paid. What do you think would happen? Because guys, if this generation of ours, the generation that supported sanctions, the generation that didn't fight sanctions, the generation that hasn't invested in businesses, the generation that only wants to see the country growing, if we don't learn to start solving our problems, this country will become worse than every other country in Africa while we're watching. I don't want that to happen during my time. Not on my watch. Don't you want to do better? So let's talk about solutions.